Alex Chemanov here, also known as the SNOtrainer. I'm going to make an argument today for why a cambered and or a stiffer board might be a better option for you, especially if you have bad knees or joints. So, huge debate with to camber or not to camber, and I'm not going to feed into that because I believe everybody has it right in terms of what environment you're in, i.e. more powder versus more hard pack, or what type of a rider you are, more that trickster, gypster versus the carver or free rider. So no arguments there, but I think one variable that hasn't been mentioned, or at least I haven't seen it, is whether or not you have bad knees or bad joints. And I think it could be explained by a principle that I use in my industry. I'm a strength and conditioning coach, and we teach all of our clients the concept of muscle loading. So muscles are nothing more than giant rubber bands, and they need to be able to load before they unload. So we love the expression, you gotta load to explode. For example, if I tell you to jump up in the air, before you go up, you first have to go down, all right? So that loading phase is gonna be vital. If you can't load, then you won't be able to unload, all right? Same concept here with these snowboards. Depending on the profile and the stiffness. Now, for our purposes here, I just have a cambered, a flat, and a rocker. I know they have all these different hybrids, and with an attempt to make rocker boards stiffer with all these different carbon inlays, it's crazy. When I was first buying snowboards, it was cambered. That's all you had. It was just based on which top sheet you want to get, which graphics look the coolest. So there's so many more options today, and I think with that creates more confusion. And to help kind of sift through some of the confusion and being able to answer some of the key questions for yourself, what environment you're gonna be riding in, what kind of rider are you, and again, my point for today, do you have bad joints, bad knees? Because that same muscle loading principle could be applied to snowboarding. So the camber profile, if we look at the shape of it, when we go into a turn, the board essentially does rocker out. It changes shape. So a cambered board is going to have a bigger contrast of neutral versus once you're in the turn. So it has the biggest change in shape versus a rocker board because it's already in that rocker position. As you get into that turn, it's going to rocker more, if that makes any sense. So if you think about the rubber band on the camber board, it's that tougher, thicker band. It's going to take more to initiate that load, but then the unload is going to be a little bit more drastic. So that makes sense as we start to think about a camber board having much more edge hold, much more stable at higher speeds, and also having a little bit more of a poppier feel compared to a rocker board. So for me, I had a pretty significant knee surgery 2 years ago. I was eligible for a partial knee at 38. And obviously being way too young, my surgeon was able to utilize a technique that he used donor cartilage, and I'm really good. I'm not 100%. Listen, I'm 40 now. My knees aren't 20, but I could do stupid things in the gym, and I could still do some pretty cool stuff out on the slopes. But what I started to feel was I was riding a flat profile board for about 8 years, and my knees would just, I would feel it after a day's riding. And I wasn't in the air as much. I'm more of a free rider. I like to lay out some turns and carve and get some speed, but I also do like to jump around and get into switch and spin in the air a little bit. But my knees would feel it while I was out there and also at the end of the day. So this past year, I actually went back to a camber board. So I'm riding an 11-year-old board, true twin, cambered, and while I was riding, my knees felt awesome. I felt like a completely different rider. And no problems at the end of the day going upstairs. Like I would just feel a little kind of ache, a little nag, nothing crazy, but just enough to know it was there. So with the camber board, I didn't feel it. And I did 2 days in a row. I rode the hardest I've ever ridden in a pretty long time, much more in the air, hitting some terrain park features, which I haven't done in a long time, but just because my knees would kind of let me know, they wouldn't be happy. So my main point of this video is to just pose an argument for, instead of the knees taking the brunt of the load when you're in the turn, for me, the camber board, as you're in that turn and as it's changing shape, all that stored energy is being held by the board, if you will, as opposed to my body, which is more in the flat or that rocker type of profile. My body would have to bear the brunt of the load much more. So if if the camber board can take the load so much more, that stored energy, and my knees don't have to do it, then my knee's gonna be happier, I'm gonna be much happier, and I'm gonna have a chance to hopefully have so much more longevity on the slopes, especially now that my two younger daughters are on the slopes. So I wanna be able to be out there for many years to come. So I'd love to hear if any of you have experienced the same thing, if you have bad knees or bad joints, and if you've made the switch to camber, and if you have felt the same responses that I have. If you haven't, and you do have bad knees, I would highly encourage you to try it out. See if you feel the same difference, either more of a camber board or a stiffer board, and see if that takes some pressure off of your knees as opposed to a flexier board, or more of a rocker or a flat board. And if you do, I'd love to hear comments from you, and just see if I'm the only one here. I know I don't have any numerical or empirical evidence. It's completely subjective, but I've been a strength and conditioning coach for going on 20 years, and it's not my first rodeo, so I'd love to hear from you guys and love to get some input from you. Otherwise, thanks so much for listening, and share it around. I'd love to hear what you guys think.